The tablecloth appeared without warning on my dining table. My mother-in-law, Carmen, had let herself into our home while I was at work. She had replaced my carefully selected runner with her family's heirloom tablecloth. This wasn't the first time Carmen had changed something in my home. It was merely the latest in a pattern of intrusions that had been happening for 5 years. I should have said something that day. Perhaps everything would have turned out differently if I had found my voice sooner. My name is Gabriela Moreno, and I am 31 years old. I work as an architectural preservationist in Valencia, Spain. My specialty is restoring historic buildings to their former glory while preserving their cultural significance. I've always been drawn to beauty in details others might overlook. In my free time, I create miniature replicas of historic buildings I've worked on. My husband Mateo and I have been married for 5 years and 3 months. He teaches literature at the university and adores his mother, perhaps a bit too much. "I brought over the family tablecloth for your dinner party," Carmen announced when I called her about the intrusion. "That little modern thing you had wouldn't do for hosting the university dean." Her voice carried the familiar tone of criticism disguised as helpfulness. The tablecloth was cream-colored with intricate hand embroidery along its edges. Carmen had shown it off at every family gathering for decades. No one but Carmen was permitted to handle it, wash it, or decide when it should be used. "I already had everything coordinated with my table settings," I replied, trying to keep frustration from my voice. There were 23 place settings already planned around my own decor choices. Carmen's tablecloth clashed with everything else I had prepared. "Nonsense, Gabriela. The family tablecloth is perfect for important guests. You simply don't understand our traditions yet." She emphasized the word "our," as she always did. 5 years of marriage hadn't made the traditions mine in her eyes. I rearranged everything to match her tablecloth instead of arguing. Mateo merely shrugged when I mentioned it to him later. "Mom means well," he said, barely looking up from his book. "She just wants to help make a good impression on my department chair." He never seemed to notice these small takeovers, or perhaps he simply didn't want to see them. The dinner party incident was minor compared to what happened 3 months earlier at my birthday celebration. We had invited 15 friends and family members to our home. I had spent 4 days preparing a menu that combined my Mexican heritage with local Spanish cuisine. Carmen arrived 2 hours early with 4 large shopping bags. "I brought some proper Spanish appetizers," she announced, pushing past me into my kitchen. "Your foreign dishes are fine for casual dinners, but these guests expect authentic local cuisine." She began unpacking her contributions and rearranging my carefully prepared platters. "I've lived in Spain for 12 years," I reminded her, "and these recipes are from my grandmother who married a Spaniard." My hands trembled slightly as I tried to maintain my composure. Carmen simply patted my arm condescendingly. "It's sweet that you try, dear, but some things take generations to truly understand." She proceeded to take over my kitchen entirely. When guests arrived, she introduced each of my dishes as if they were her own creations. Mateo said nothing as his mother claimed credit for my work. He even complimented her on saving the evening later that night. I cried silently in the bathroom afterward. The tablecloth appeared again at Easter when Carmen insisted we host at our house. It materialized at my niece's baptism celebration when we offered our garden for the reception. It spread across our table when Mateo's university colleagues came for dinner. Each time, Carmen would arrive early to help and ensure the tablecloth was properly displayed. "Only family members who understand its value are allowed to handle it," she told me once when I offered to iron it. Her smile never reached her eyes. Sophia, my sister-in-law, smirked from across the room. She alone was trusted with the precious tablecloth's care when Carmen couldn't manage it herself. These incidents continued to accumulate like small paper cuts on my dignity. Carmen fixed my flower arrangements minutes before guests arrived. She rearranged furniture when visiting our home. She criticized my accent when I spoke Spanish to relatives. She told embarrassing stories about my early cooking attempts at family gatherings. Each time, Mateo would shrug it off as just how Mom is, or her way of showing love. Perhaps the most painful incident was my 5-year anniversary party. I had planned a beautiful celebration at our favorite restaurant. I had organized everything 3 months in advance. 2 days before the event, I discovered Carmen had spoken with the restaurant owner. She had completely changed the menu, the seating arrangements, and added 17 extra guests without consulting me. I know Mateo better than anyone, she explained when confronted. This is what he would truly want for his special day. She patted my hand like one might comfort a confused child. Besides, I've already sent out the additional invitations. Mateo suggested we just go with his mother's changes rather than create drama. The worst betrayal, however, was when Carmen undermined me at work. I had spent 6 months securing a restoration project for a 16th century chapel. Carmen was friends with the director of the Historical Society overseeing the project. During a social gathering, she casually mentioned that perhaps I wasn't experienced enough for such important cultural work since I wasn't truly Spanish by blood. "I'm just concerned about our heritage being properly preserved," she told the director while looking directly at me. These treasures deserve someone who inherently understands their significance. 3 other committee members were standing nearby. The director reassigned me to a smaller project the following week. Mateo suggested I might have misunderstood what happened. All of these incidents led to Christmas Eve, the night everything changed. I had planned for months to host my first Noche Buena in our home. I prepared traditional dishes from both my heritage and Spanish customs. I had selected beautiful decorations and arranged everything perfectly. Carmen had reluctantly agreed to let me host, though she offered to bring her tablecloth. 22 family members arrived that evening. I had spent 3 days cooking and decorating. As guests settled in, Carmen called everyone to the table. I moved toward the host position at the head of the table, my place as the hostess in my own home. Carmen smoothly stepped in front of me. "Gabriella, dear, you're at this end," she said, gesturing to a place at the far corner. "I always sit at the head when the family tablecloth is used. It's tradition." Her voice was sweet, but her eyes were cold. She placed her hand firmly on the back of the chair I had intended to occupy. Mateo looked between us for a moment. 22 pairs of eyes watched this power struggle unfold in my dining room. "Maybe just for tonight, Gabby?" he suggested weakly. "For the sake of holiday harmony?" His eyes pleaded for compliance rather than confrontation. Something inside me cracked in that moment. 6 years of accommodations, concessions, and swallowed dignity crystallized into perfect clarity. I looked at Carmen's triumphant smile. I saw Sophia's smirk. I noticed Aunt Teresa's uncomfortable expression, and my father-in-law's studied interest in his water glass. "No," I said simply. The word hung in the air like frost. "This is my home. I planned this dinner. I cooked for 3 days. I will sit at the head of my own table." My voice remained steady as the room fell completely silent. Carmen's face hardened. "You clearly don't understand family traditions or respect. This tablecloth has been at the head of family gatherings for 40 years. She clutched the back of the chair possessively. "Then perhaps we don't need the tablecloth tonight," I replied, meeting her gaze directly. For the first time, I didn't look away from her disapproval. I didn't accommodate her unreasonable demand. I simply stood my ground in my own home, at my own table, on Christmas Eve. The silence around my dining table stretched for 12 excruciatingly long seconds. Carmen's knuckles whitened against the chair back. Her eyes narrowed dangerously at my unexpected defiance. Family members exchanged uncomfortable glances while holding their breath. Mateo shifted his weight from foot to foot, caught between wife and mother for perhaps the first time. "Well," Carmen finally said with a tight smile, "I see being married to a Spaniard hasn't taught you proper respect for family traditions." She released the chair with deliberate slowness. "If you insist on breaking tradition, we can certainly accommodate your cultural differences." The way she emphasized those last words made them sound like a disease. I remained standing firmly by my rightful place. I respect traditions, Carmen. I simply expect respect in return, especially in my own home. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my voice remained steady. I pulled out my chair and sat down at the head of the table. 22 people watched in stunned silence. Carmen took the seat at the opposite end, her smile brittle as glass. The famous family tablecloth remained beneath our Christmas feast, but something fundamental had shifted. I had finally drawn a line. Throughout dinner, Carmen made passive-aggressive comments about modern wives and cultural misunderstandings. Each time, I responded politely but firmly rather than apologizing or acquiescing. The traditional Spanish cooking method actually involves less garlic, Carmen noted loudly after tasting my paella. 4 relatives looked up nervously. "This is my grandmother's recipe from Seville, modified to my personal taste," I replied calmly. "Everyone has their own interpretation of traditional dishes." I offered more to Aunt Teresa, who accepted with a surprised smile. By dessert, Mateo had noticed the change. He kept glancing between his mother and me with growing unease. When Carmen criticized my choice of serving Spanish terrones alongside Mexican polvorones, suggesting it confused the cultural integrity of the holiday, Mateo actually spoke up. "I think the combination is delicious," he said, helping himself to both desserts. "Gabriella always creates wonderful holiday spreads." It was a small intervention, but the first time he had ever contradicted his mother regarding me. The evening ended earlier than planned. Carmen claimed a headache and departed with Jorge and Sofia in tow. The remaining guests seemed more relaxed after their departure. Several even complimented my cooking without glancing nervously at Carmen first. Mateo helped clean up without being asked, another first. "Mom seemed upset tonight," he ventured while washing dishes. "Maybe you could call her tomorrow? Smooth things over?" His suggestion was gentler than usual, more question than direction. "I think it's best if we let some time pass," I replied, carefully wrapping leftover terrones. "I wasn't disrespectful, Mateo. I simply maintained my position as hostess in our home." I looked at him directly. That shouldn't require an apology. He nodded slowly, absorbing this new perspective. "I suppose you're right. It's just, Mom has always been the one who—" He trailed off, perhaps realizing for the first time how unusual the dynamic truly was. "The one who controls every family gathering?" I finished for him. "The one whose preferences always supersede everyone else's, even in their own homes?" I kept my tone gentle but firm. That might be how things have always been, but it doesn't make it right. The days after Christmas marked the beginning of my awakening. When Carmen called 3 days later expecting me to apologize, I politely but firmly stood my ground. I declined her invitation to help properly clean her tablecloth. I didn't respond to her text criticizing my Christmas dessert choices. I didn't engage when she complained to Mateo about my holiday rudeness. 2 weeks later, Carmen invited us to Sunday lunch at her home. Usually, I would rearrange my schedule to accommodate her invitations, fearing the repercussions of refusal. This time, I checked my calendar and declined politely. I have plans with Claudia that day, I told her, referring to a work colleague Carmen had always dismissed as beneath my social standing. Surely you can reschedule with the office girl, Carmen responded dismissively. Family lunch is more important than coffee with employees. Claudia is the regional preservation director now, not an office girl, I corrected calmly. And we're discussing a potential collaboration. I won't be rescheduling. The silence on the phone lasted several seconds. I see your priorities have shifted, Carmen finally said, her voice brittle. Mateo will be disappointed. Her standard manipulation tactic, triangulation between her son and me. Mateo understands my professional commitments, I replied. You're welcome to schedule lunch for the following Sunday if you'd like us both to attend. I maintained control of my time and boundaries for the first time in 6 years. As January progressed into February, I continued reclaiming parts of myself that had been diminished under Carmen's influence. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected because Carmen didn't approve of them. I resumed my miniature building hobby that Carmen had dismissed as childish crafts. I spoke more Spanish with my Mexican accent rather than straining to sound more Castilian to please her. Most significantly, I invested more energy in my career. I pitched an innovative preservation approach for Valencia's historic Silk Exchange building. My concept combined traditional preservation techniques with subtle modern elements that would make the space more accessible while honoring its original character. Claudia, the newly appointed regional director, recognized the vision behind my proposal. This is exactly the fresh perspective we've been seeking, she told me after reviewing my presentation. Your bicultural background gives you insights others have missed entirely. Her acknowledgement of the very quality Carmen criticized most felt like cool water after years in the desert. Mateo noticed the changes in me gradually. You seem different lately, he commented one evening in mid-February. More like when we first met. He said this with a mixture of admiration and uncertainty. I'm remembering who I was before I started trying to please your mother, I replied honestly. The person you actually fell in love with. I was sketching a miniature design at my desk, something I hadn't done in our home for at least 3 years. I didn't realize how much you'd... He paused, searching for the right word. Diminishing myself, I offered. Contorting to fit expectations that could never be satisfied. My tone wasn't accusatory, merely factual. His expression shifted from confusion to dawning realization. I never wanted you to feel that way, he said quietly. But you never noticed when I did, I pointed out, or when your mother consistently undermined me in my career, my home, my marriage. The truth hung between us, uncomfortable but necessary. In early March, everything changed. I received an email that left me staring at my screen in disbelief for several minutes. The International Preservation Society had selected my proposal for the Silk Exchange building from among 78 submissions worldwide. They were featuring my innovative approach in their annual publication. Additionally, they invited me to present at their conference in Rome the following month. This is extraordinary, my boss exclaimed when I shared the news. No one from our firm has ever received this recognition. Colleagues gathered around, offering congratulations. Several admitted they had previously underestimated me based on Carmen's subtle comments at social functions. That evening, I shared the news with Mateo over dinner at our favorite restaurant. His genuine pride warmed me in ways I hadn't experienced in years. This is incredible, Gabi. You absolutely deserve this recognition. He ordered champagne to celebrate without a single reference to checking with his mother first. The conference coincides with your mother's birthday celebration, I mentioned cautiously. Carmen had been planning her 65th birthday party for months. She had already sent preliminary invitations for the milestone event. Mateo's expression faltered momentarily, then resolved into determination. Then we'll celebrate with her before or after. This opportunity is too important to miss. He reached for my hand across the table. I'm sorry I haven't been more supportive of your career. The recognition transformed more than my professional standing. Colleagues who had previously kept their distance now sought my input on their projects. The Regional Cultural Heritage Department requested my consultation on 3 additional historic sites. My perspective was suddenly valued rather than tolerated. I hadn't told Carmen about the award yet. I savored this achievement privately, protecting it from her inevitable dismissal or attempts to diminish its significance. This recognition belonged solely to me, not to the family, not to connections, not to marriage. I had earned it through my own talent and perseverance. As March ended, I received another extraordinary email. Elena Vasquez, Spain's most renowned architectural preservationist, requested a meeting after reading about my silk exchange proposal. She specifically mentioned my unique cross-cultural perspective as something that brought fresh insight to Spain's architectural heritage. She proposed mentoring me through the implementation phase of the project. "This is unprecedented," told me when I shared Elena's email. "She rarely takes an interest in emerging preservationists. This could change the trajectory of your entire career." The genuine excitement in her eyes reflected the magnitude of this opportunity. That night, I sat at my desk long after Mateo had gone to bed. I traced my fingers over designs that represented my authentic vision, not diluted to please Carmen, not altered to seem properly Spanish. For the first time in years, I felt fully myself. The woman who had been gradually erased was re-emerging, stronger and more confident than before. I glanced at my phone, noticing 3 missed calls from Carmen and 5 text messages about her birthday celebration planning. For the first time, I didn't feel obligated to respond immediately. I turned off my phone, returned to my designs, and worked until sunrise, filled with a sense of purpose I had nearly forgotten. As I watched dawn break over Valencia's historic skyline, I realized something profound had shifted. The International Preservation Society hadn't just recognized my work. They had validated the very aspects of my identity that Carmen had spent years trying to erase. My dual heritage, my different perspective, my fresh approach, these weren't liabilities to be hidden, but strengths to be celebrated. I was no longer seeking Carmen's approval. I was no longer diminishing myself to avoid her criticism. I was standing firmly in my own expertise and worth. The realization settled over me with surprising lightness. Whatever came next with Carmen, I would face it as my complete self, not as the compliant, apologetic daughter-in-law she had attempted to create. 3 months passed in a whirlwind of professional achievements and personal growth. Spring turned to early summer in Valencia, bringing warmth to the ancient stones of the buildings I now helped preserve with recognized expertise. The changes in my life accumulated like light, gradually filling a darkened room. My presentation at the Rome conference had been received with enthusiasm by preservation experts from 27 different countries. Elena Vasquez had not only attended my session, but had publicly praised my innovative approach afterward. 7 different heritage organizations had approached me about consultation work. My career had advanced more in 3 months than in the previous 5 years combined. Your cross-cultural perspective is precisely what's been missing in traditional preservation, Elena told me during our third mentoring session. You see connections and possibilities others miss entirely. Coming from Spain's most respected preservationist, this validation carried immeasurable weight. At home, Mateo had begun noticing the subtle ways his mother had manipulated our lives. I never realized how often Mom inserted herself into our decisions, he admitted one evening in May. It's like I'm seeing clearly for the first time. This awakening hadn't been without tension, but our marriage felt more balanced than ever before. Carmen, however, had intensified her efforts to regain control. Her calls and texts increased in frequency. Her comments became less veiled in their criticism. When direct manipulation failed, she attempted new strategies, including sudden health concerns that mysteriously resolved when they no longer served her purpose. Your mother-in-law stopped by the office yesterday, Claudia mentioned during our weekly project review. She wanted to discuss concerns about your workload affecting family obligations. Claudia's raised eyebrow conveyed her professional assessment of this interference. What did you tell her? I asked, embarrassed but no longer surprised by Carmen's intrusions. That your work exemplifies the highest standards in our field, and that your personal schedule is entirely your own business. Claudia's smile was understanding but firm. She seemed quite taken aback by not receiving the response she expected. Carmen's birthday celebration had become her latest control mechanism. The event was scheduled for July 15th at Valencia's most exclusive social club. Planning had consumed her for months. Invitations had been sent to 75 guests, including influential members of Valencia's cultural community, many of whom now worked directly with me. Mom expects us both to participate in the planning committee, Mateo informed me after one of Carmen's many calls. She's particularly insistent that you help with the traditional family elements. His tone was cautious, aware of the manipulation inherent in the request. I can attend a planning session, but my schedule won't allow for committee participation, I responded calmly. The Silk Exchange project enters its critical phase next week. I no longer automatically rearranged my professional commitments to accommodate Carmen's demands. This measured response triggered an escalation. Carmen appeared at our home unannounced the following evening. She brought the family tablecloth, naturally, along with 3 photo albums and a list of essential birthday traditions requiring family participation. A milestone birthday is about family continuity, she announced, spreading materials across our dining table without asking permission. Your work will always be there, but family celebrations happen only once. Her smile was tight as she added, "Unless your Mexican traditions view family obligations differently?" "My heritage values both family and personal integrity," I replied, maintaining eye contact, "which includes honoring professional commitments regardless of cultural background." I didn't take the bait of her cultural dig. "I can attend one planning session next week," as I told Mateo. Carmen's expression hardened momentarily before she recovered her composure. "I understand your work has received some local attention lately. That's lovely, dear." Her dismissive tone was familiar. "But surely you recognize that maintaining family connections will serve you better in the long term than temporary professional interests." "The International Preservation Society and Spain's Cultural Heritage Department might disagree with that assessment," Mateo interjected, surprising both of us. "Gabriella's work is being implemented as a model for future preservation projects nationwide." His defense was unexpected and warming. Carmen's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. "How nice that you found a little niche, Gabriella." She patted my hand condescendingly. Now, about the birthday celebration, the tablecloth was needs special handling for display at the head table. The evening continued with Carmen outlining her expectations while ignoring my professional boundaries. When she finally left, Mateo seemed troubled. She's always been controlling, but something feels different lately, more desperate somehow. His insight showed how much his awareness had grown. The following week brought a disturbing revelation. I was having coffee with Elena after reviewing project specifications when she mentioned Carmen's birthday celebration. Your mother-in-law has been quite persistent about changing our consultation schedule, she noted casually. What consultation schedule? I asked, confused. Elena looked equally puzzled. She contacted my office claiming to represent you. She said you needed to reschedule all July appointments due to family obligations. Elena's expression grew concerned at my obvious shock. She mentioned you'd be taking a step back from the Silk Exchange project temporarily for family reasons. Ice formed in my stomach. I never authorized that. I've made no such plans to reduce my involvement. The implications of Carmen's interference hit me fully. Did she contact anyone else regarding my professional commitments? Elena's silence answered my question. I believe she may have reached out to several stakeholders. She seemed quite knowledgeable about your project timeline and contacts. Elena's voice was gentle but serious. This level of interference in a professional context is highly unusual, Gabriella. That evening, I discovered how far Carmen's manipulation extended. 3 emails from project partners referenced schedule changes I had never requested. 2 mentioned family leave I hadn't planned. 1 even referred to a temporary replacement I had supposedly approved, Sophia, who had recently completed a basic art history course. This is beyond inappropriate, Mateo said when I showed him the evidence. Mom has crossed a serious line. His face reflected genuine anger, the first time I'd seen him truly upset with his mother's behavior. I spent the next day contacting everyone in my professional circle to clarify that no schedule changes had been requested and that I remained fully committed to all projects. Most expressed confusion, but understanding. Several mentioned Carmen had been quite convincing, citing family traditions and cultural obligations that required my presence. That Saturday, we attended a family dinner at Carmen and Jorge's home. Sophia was there with her husband Antonio, along with Aunt Teresa and Carmen's friend Lucia. The atmosphere felt strangely tense from the moment we arrived. Carmen was overly cheerful, while Sophia kept exchanging meaningful glances with her mother. We were just discussing the birthday celebration plans, Carmen announced as we sat down. The family tablecloth covered the dining table, of course. Sophia has been tremendously helpful with all the arrangements. She beamed at her daughter while pointedly ignoring my presence. Halfway through dinner, Carmen mentioned the Silk Exchange project casually. I understand there have been some concerns about the direction of the restoration, she said, looking directly at me. My friend on the Heritage Committee mentioned they're considering more traditional approaches than what was initially proposed. The statement was so blatantly false that I nearly choked on my wine. That's interesting, I replied calmly. I met with the entire committee yesterday, and they expressed nothing but enthusiasm for the current approach. I maintained a pleasant smile. In fact, we're implementing additional elements from my Rome presentation. Carmen's expression froze momentarily. Sophia quickly changed the subject to birthday celebration details, but the tension remained palpable. After dinner, I excused myself to use the restroom. Passing Carmen's study, I heard Sophia's voice through the partially open door. Mother, she's not backing down on the project despite everything you've done. Sophia's tone was hushed but urgent. Elena Vasquez is fully supporting her approach, and the committee won't overrule Elena. The birthday will change everything, Carmen replied confidently. I've invited Director Fernandez and the entire Heritage Board. Once I explain how her inexperience threatens our cultural legacy, they'll reconsider. Her voice hardened. I've preserved our family's position for 40 years. I won't let an outsider dismantle everything I've built. Sophia lowered her voice further. What about the tablecloth plan? Is that still happening at the birthday? Absolutely, Carmen confirmed. It's the perfect opportunity to put her in her place publicly. The family connections I've cultivated will make her position untenable afterward. Mateo will finally see she's not suitable for this family. I froze outside the door, heart pounding in my chest. The conversation continued, but footsteps approaching from the hallway forced me to move quickly to the bathroom. My hands trembled as I processed what I'd overheard. This wasn't simple control or manipulation. It was deliberate sabotage of my career and marriage. Later that night, I searched Carmen's name in my email. Dozens of messages appeared from various professional contacts referencing conversations with her I knew nothing about. She had been systematically undermining me for months, possibly years, contacting colleagues, partners, and superiors behind my back. Further investigation revealed something even more disturbing. Carmen had created an email address nearly identical to mine, with just one character difference. She had been sending messages that appeared to come from me, requesting changes or expressing concerns about projects. The deception was sophisticated and deliberate. I discovered a message thread between Carmen, Sophia, and 3 Heritage Committee members. Carmen had organized a concerned cultural preservation group to question my qualifications at the exact time of her birthday celebration. The plan included a public review of my work during her party, where many influential preservation professionals would be present. The family tablecloth featured prominently in their planning. It would be ceremonially displayed at Carmen's birthday with some sort of public announcement about true family lineage and cultural authenticity, clearly designed to humiliate me professionally and personally. I sat in stunned silence at my desk until 3 in the morning, compiling evidence of the systematic campaign against me. When Mateo woke to find me still awake, surrounded by printouts and notes, I showed him everything: the fake email address, the interference with professional contacts, the planned ambush at the birthday celebration. I knew Mom could be controlling, but this is... He struggled to find words, his face pale with shock. This is calculated destruction. How could she do this? For the first time, he saw the full extent of his mother's manipulation. As dawn broke over Valencia, we sat together in our kitchen, drinking coffee and planning our response. The birthday celebration was only 2 weeks away. Carmen had invited every significant person in my professional circle, along with 70 other guests. She had been planning my public humiliation for months, while pretending to simply plan a family celebration. We have 2 choices, Mateo said finally. We can avoid the celebration entirely, which lets her control the narrative in our absence, or, he paused, meeting my eyes with newfound resolve. Or we can attend on our terms, with full awareness of what she's planning, I finished for him, and be prepared to respond accordingly. The decision crystallized between us, unspoken but clear. We would not run from this confrontation. We would meet it head on, prepared and united. I gathered my evidence carefully over the next 10 days. I saved every falsified email, documented every interference, collected testimonials from confused colleagues. Elena, upon learning the full extent of Carmen's actions, provided a written statement confirming my professional standing and the value of my work. As July 15th approached, Carmen increased her communication, confirming our attendance and participation in multiple family traditions during the celebration. Each message carried thinly veiled references to my cultural background, my professional limitations, or my failure to fully integrate into proper Spanish society. The night before the birthday celebration, I carefully pressed my favorite dress, a beautiful design that honored both my Mexican heritage and Spanish influences. I laid out my professional portfolio and Elena's letter of support. I checked that all evidence was properly organized in my tablet. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" Mateo asked as we prepared for bed. His expression was solemn but determined. "Yes," I replied simply. After 6 years of diminishing myself to avoid conflict, after months of reclaiming my voice and worth, after discovering the deliberate campaign to undermine everything I had built, I was finally ready to stand in my full truth, whatever the consequences might be. The family tablecloth that had symbolized my exclusion for years would no longer hold power over me. Tomorrow, at Carmen's carefully orchestrated celebration, the truth would finally come to light, and nothing would ever be the same again. The Palacio de Luz glittered with crystal chandeliers and polished marble floors. Carmen had chosen Valencia's most exclusive social venue for her 65th birthday celebration. 78 guests mingled in the grand ballroom, sipping champagne and admiring elaborate floral arrangements. The evening sun cast golden light through tall windows as we arrived precisely at 7:30. Carmen had positioned herself near the entrance to greet guests. She wore an expensive new dress and jewelry that caught the light with every movement. Her hair and makeup were professionally done. She looked every bit the respected matriarch she considered herself to be. "Gabriela, Mateo," she exclaimed with practiced warmth when we approached. "I wasn't certain you would make it, given how busy you've been." Her smile remained fixed as she kissed my cheek. "The family tablecloth is already in place at the head table. Everyone has been admiring it." "We wouldn't miss your special day, Mother," Mateo replied smoothly. His hand remained firmly at the small of my back, a silent signal of unity. Carmen's eyes flickered briefly to this gesture before she turned to greet other arriving guests. The ballroom contained virtually everyone of importance in Valencia's cultural heritage community. Director Fernandez from the Preservation Committee stood chatting with 3 board members. Elena Vasquez had just arrived and was speaking with international colleagues. Sofia and Antonio circulated through the crowd, occasionally glancing in our direction. The infamous family tablecloth dominated the head table on an elevated platform. It had been specially lit to highlight its intricate embroidery. Beside it stood a large presentation easel covered with a decorative cloth, presumably hiding whatever family tradition Carmen planned to unveil. "She's arranged quite an audience," I murmured to Mateo as we accepted champagne from a passing server. 26 professional contacts crucial to my career were present. Carmen had been thorough in gathering witnesses for my planned humiliation. "Director Fernandez mentioned a special presentation about cultural heritage tonight," Elena commented, joining us with a concerned expression. "He was rather vague about details, but said Carmen insisted it was an important traditional announcement." For the next 45 minutes, we mingled cautiously through the crowd. I noticed Sophia checking her watch repeatedly and whispering to Carmen. Aunt Teresa watched these exchanges with an increasingly troubled expression. The presentation easel remained mysteriously covered as servers began directing guests toward their tables. Carmen's voice suddenly projected through the room. "If I could have everyone's attention, please." She stood at the head table, one hand possessively touching the family tablecloth. "Before dinner is served, we have a special family tradition to observe." The room quieted as 78 guests turned toward her. Carmen's smile was triumphant as she continued. "As many of you know, preserving cultural heritage and family traditions has always been my life's dedication." Several Heritage Committee members nodded appreciatively. "Tonight, on my 65th birthday, I want to share something precious with all of you." Carmen gestured to Sophia, who moved to the covered easel. "The Delgado family tablecloth has graced important family occasions for over 60 years. Only those who truly understand and honor our Spanish heritage have been entrusted with its care." My stomach tightened as I recognized the familiar preamble to exclusion. Mateo's hand found mine under the table and squeezed reassuringly. Carmen continued speaking, her voice carrying clearly through the silent room. "This tablecloth represents our family's authentic Spanish lineage and cultural authority." Her gaze swept meaningfully toward the Heritage Committee members before landing pointedly on me. "In keeping with tradition, I will now announce who will be entrusted with this precious heritage after me." Sophia dramatically removed the cloth covering the easel, revealing mounted photographs and documents. I instantly recognized several emails that appeared to be from my account, but that I had never written. The display included manipulated images of my preservation work alongside traditional approaches, clearly designed to contrast unfavorably. "As preservation professionals, you understand the importance of authentic cultural perspective," Carmen continued smoothly. "Which is why I must share my concerns about certain modernist influences threatening our architectural heritage." Her eyes locked with mine across the room. "Sometimes those without proper understanding attempt to change what should be preserved." Director Fernandez leaned forward with interest. Several committee members nodded. The trap was springing exactly as planned, using my professional colleagues as witnesses to my public diminishment. Carmen reached for a crystal glass. "I would like to propose a toast to preserving authentic Spanish heritage in truly Spanish hands for generations to come." She raised her glass while Sophia distributed what appeared to be printed materials to key heritage professionals. Mateo stood suddenly, his chair scraping loudly against marble. "Before that toast, I believe I should offer one first." His voice rang clearly through the startled silence. "After all, it's traditional for the son to honor his mother on her birthday." Carmen's smile faltered slightly, but recovered. "Of course, darling. How thoughtful." She clearly hadn't anticipated this interruption to her carefully orchestrated moment. Mateo raised his glass, commanding the attention of all 78 guests. "To my mother on her 65th birthday," his voice carried across the silent room, "who has demonstrated exactly how far she will go to maintain control, even at the expense of her own family's happiness and professional integrity." Carmen's smile froze. Sophia stepped forward as if to intervene, but Mateo continued speaking, his voice steady and clear. "Many of you know my wife, Gabriela, as an innovative preservationist whose work has received international recognition." He gestured toward Elena Vasquez, who nodded firmly. "What you may not know is the systematic campaign my mother has conducted to undermine that work and damage my wife's professional standing." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Carmen's face had drained of color. "Mateo, this is hardly the appropriate." "On the contrary, Mother, you selected this audience and this moment." Mateo's voice hardened. "You created false email accounts in my wife's name. You contacted her colleagues with fabricated concerns. You attempted to sabotage international recognition of her work. I stood beside my husband, opening my tablet to display the evidence we had compiled. For anyone interested in the truth, I have documented evidence of every false communication sent in my name. My voice remained calm despite my racing heart, including those sent to people in this room. Director Fernandez stepped forward, frowning. What exactly are you suggesting, Señora Moreno? That Carmen Delgado created this falsified email showing my supposed concerns about the SILP exchange project. And this, I swiped to show another fabricated message requesting project delays, and approximately 37 others over the past 4 months alone. Elena moved to stand beside me. I can confirm that Carmen repeatedly misrepresented herself as speaking for Gabriela in professional contexts. Her authoritative voice carried significant weight in the room. The documents on that easel contain manipulated information and false statements. Carmen's face contorted with fury. How dare you disrupt my birthday celebration with these ridiculous accusations? This is exactly why outsiders cannot be trusted with cultural heritage matters. Her carefully cultivated social mask slipped entirely. This Mexican girl has never understood proper Spanish traditions. The naked prejudice in her statement shocked the room into complete silence. Several guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. Aunt Teresa closed her eyes briefly in dismay. I understand Spanish traditions perfectly well, Carmen. I also understand professional ethics, personal boundaries, and the difference between preserving culture and weaponizing it against others. I moved toward the display easel, maintaining eye contact with her. What I don't understand is why a mother would actively try to destroy her son's wife's career and reputation. Carmen's composure shattered completely. Because you're changing everything. You're taking my son, altering our traditions, inserting foreign ideas into our heritage. Her voice rose shrilly. That tablecloth represents 60 years of my position in this community. You have no right to any of it. The raw truth of her motivations hung in the air. 78 witnesses observed her transformation from respected cultural guardian to exposed manipulator. Sophia stepped backward, unwilling to be associated with the public meltdown. Mateo spoke into the stunned silence. For 6 years, I failed to see what was happening. I allowed my mother's manipulation to damage my marriage and hurt my wife. He turned to face me directly. Gabriela, I am profoundly sorry for every time I didn't stand beside you. That ends tonight. He then addressed the assembled guests. My mother arranged this gathering to publicly undermine my wife's professional standing and cultural heritage. Instead, she has only revealed her own prejudice and unethical behavior. His voice remained steady despite the emotion visible in his eyes. Director Fernandez stepped forward. Carmen, these accusations appear to be substantiated. False communications in a professional preservation context would be extraordinarily serious. Other committee members nodded gravely. We will need to review this evidence formally. Carmen looked desperately around the room, seeking allies. Most guests averted their eyes, unwilling to associate with her exposed behavior. Even Sophia remained silent, suddenly fascinated by her champagne glass. Aunt Teresa surprisingly stepped forward. Carmen, this has gone far enough. I've watched you manipulate this family for decades, but this crosses every boundary. She turned to me with genuine regret in her eyes. Gabriela, I apologize for every time I remained silent while witnessing this treatment. I moved toward the head table, where the family tablecloth lay in its position of honor. This tablecloth has symbolized exclusion and control for years. It's been used to determine who belongs and who doesn't. I looked directly at Carmen. But it holds no power unless we give it that power. Carmen lunged forward. "Don't you dare touch it! You have no right!" Her voice bordered on hysterical. "I have every right to define my own worth, independent of your approval or traditions." I deliberately placed my hand on the tablecloth. "Your son chose me. My colleagues respect my work." My heritage enriches rather than diminishes Spanish culture. Each statement landed with quiet certainty. "This celebration was meant to elevate you and diminish me," I continued. "Instead, it has simply revealed the truth to everyone who matters professionally and personally." I stepped away from the tablecloth. I won't apologize for my heritage, my success, or my place in this family. Not ever again. The following weeks brought significant changes. Director Fernandez launched a formal investigation into Carmen's professional interference. 3 committee members personally apologized for being influenced by her manipulations. Elena Vasquez publicly praised my work at a preservation conference, definitively establishing my professional standing. Carmen retreated from social circles as news of her behavior spread through Valencia's cultural community. Her carefully cultivated reputation suffered irreparable damage. Sofia initially defended her mother, but eventually admitted knowledge of the falsified emails. Jorge finally acknowledged his role in enabling decades of manipulation through silence. Mateo and I established clear boundaries regarding family interactions. We declined Sunday lunches for 3 months while Carmen sought counseling for her controlling behavior. We met with her only in public settings with specific time limits. We required acknowledgement of manipulative comments rather than allowing them to pass unchallenged. 8 months after the birthday revelation, we cautiously agreed to a family dinner at a neutral restaurant. Carmen arrived without the tablecloth for the first time in memory. She spoke carefully, avoiding cultural references or passive-aggressive comments. When she started to criticize my new preservation project, she caught herself mid-sentence and redirected the conversation. "Your international recognition has brought positive attention to Valencia's preservation community," she acknowledged stiffly during dessert. The words clearly cost her considerable effort. Jorge nodded encouragingly from beside her. "Thank you, Carmen," I replied simply, neither effusive nor cold. "The committee's support has been invaluable." I maintained polite boundaries without seeking her approval or fearing her disapproval. 1 year after the confrontation, my career flourished beyond what I had imagined possible. My preservation approach had been implemented at 5 historic sites across Spain. 2 international preservation organizations had invited me to consult on projects in Mexico and Italy. Elena Vasquez and I had co-published a paper on cross-cultural preservation techniques. Our home life transformed equally dramatically. Mateo became a true partner rather than a passive mediator. He established his own boundaries with his mother and recognized manipulation attempts immediately. We made decisions together without seeking outside approval. We celebrated traditions from both our heritages without hierarchy or judgment. Carmen's journey toward change progressed in small, inconsistent steps. Some family gatherings still ended prematurely when old patterns emerged. Other interactions showed genuine improvement. She never fully acknowledged the extent of her manipulation, but she no longer controlled family events or professional connections. The infamous tablecloth made its final appearance at Easter dinner 17 months after the confrontation. Carmen mentioned she was considering retiring it from regular use. Perhaps it's time for new traditions that blend both family histories, she suggested tentatively, glancing at me. The statement wasn't a full apology or complete transformation. It was simply one small step toward a healthier dynamic. I nodded acknowledgement without effusive praise or lingering resentment. New traditions might be refreshing for everyone, I agreed calmly. As we drove home that evening, Matteo reached for my hand. "You've changed everything," he said quietly. "Not just for us, but for the entire family." I watched Valencia's historic architecture pass by outside the window, buildings I now helped preserve with nationally recognized expertise. "I simply stopped diminishing myself to make others comfortable," I replied. "The most powerful thing we can do is stand firmly in our own truth." The family tablecloth no longer symbolized my exclusion. It had become merely fabric, no longer imbued with power to determine my worth or belonging. I had found something far more valuable than approval or inclusion. I had reclaimed my voice, my heritage, and my rightful place, both at the table and in the world beyond it.